Welcome to the Times of Industry show, and today I'm having a very serious conversation, a Q&A session with one of the most recognizable figures on the alternative media and on YouTube, Mr. GERALD CELENTE. He's a returning guest. I love this guy. Actually, I've been reading the Trends Journal for years, and it is a great time to hear opinions from various sides of each argument, since the country is very divided on multiple topics, as is the entire world. And yet there are many intelligent people that we can listen to and get some more in-depth information. And they are looking to make a difference. None are more insightful and have a more vigorous opinion on stuff than GERALD CELENTE. He's known as the trends forecaster, publishes a beautiful trends journal report, and I can tell you all about it when we wrap up today's interview. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I want to ask you, first of all, GERALD, President Trump, and as it looks like, he's trying to make the dollar, like the yen or like the euro, a zero interest rate currency, basically fixed to zero. I have my own opinion on why he's trying to do it, but it will allow Washington to control the flow of funds better, basically taxation and the appropriation of subsidies money. That will be the entire thing, because interest rate will not play a role anymore. Do you think he's setting the stage from some sort of a debt jubilee or any other major write-offs to the national debt? I can't see how cutting taxes, which is what he did, knowing that it will create giant deficits down the road, he is not preparing some sort of a monetization scheme on the other side of this.
Well, that's an interesting perspective. I don't think it goes that deep. I mean, you may be correct. I'm not arguing it. But the reason why he cut taxes, to me, and let's not forget, he's in the business of real estate and development. So he did it for his own good as well. And that's what Trump is about. It's about him. And when you look at the tax cuts, who did it help? According to the Tax Policy Center, 86% of the cuts went to the 1%. And we saw the results coming already from the tax results from the average person in this current year. It really didn't help much at all. And what else they did was they infused buybacks, stock buybacks, to record levels. We saw nearly over $1 trillion in 2018, and stock buybacks are ramping up again this year to probably break another record. I believe that they're going to pressure that he's putting on the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates is really the major issue, is that he wants to get reelected. And when you look at the poll results, while he only has a 46% poll rating, which, by the way, this is what Obama had this time during his term. When you look at the poll ratings for Trump regarding the economy, they're up to around 56% of the people approve of what he's doing economically. So with the presidential reality show in full swing, he wants to win the election, and the election is going to be won on, as Bill Clinton's campaign said back in 1992, it's the economy, stupid. And when you look at the job creations that have happened since he's been in, where are most of them coming from? The red states. So in the United States, the election is really about the Electoral College. It's not about popular vote. And Trump won the Electoral College in the last election and lost the popular vote. So he's going to lower interest rates. I believe he's going to put pressure on the Fed to do it. And anyone that doesn't think that the president puts pressure on the Federal Reserve, they should grow up and read the past, how Nixon put pressure on Burns to lower interest rates before the election, and how Paul Volcker was pressured by Ronald Reagan, given orders, and he writes it in his book, that the president said through James Baker, the chief of staff, you have orders not to raise interest rates before the election. So I believe they're going to lower interest rates because the economy is going to begin to slow down by the next quarter. And they'll lower interest rates aggressively. They could raise them 9 times since 2015. They could lower them several times before by 2020 to juice the economy. And so that's the way I see it. It's going to be done for political reasons and economic reasons. Trump's in the real estate business. You look what happened when interest rates were going up back in 2018, and the Fed announced that they were going to aggressively raise interest rates. The markets went into bear territory, down 20% around the globe, and lower in many places. And you started seeing, for example, in Southern California, home sales plunged 20% as interest rates, 30-year mortgage topped near 5%. So now they're back down to under 4.5%. And sales are going back up again. I believe that by the time the 2020 election comes about, you'll see a 30-year mortgage under 4%.
Another controversial topic, Gerald, and I completely agree with you that if politicians had the ability to set interest rates, they will always be zero, is how monetary policies in the past 10 years, the QE programs, the asset purchases by central banks, the low interest rates, even negative and zero ones, they've all created these giant buyback programs, like you said, and credit and productivity did not trickle down to the lower classes in the middle class. You've seen wages pretty much stagnant for the past 30 years, except for the last 1 to 2 years where there's literally a shortage of just skilled labor in the U.S. It has nothing to do with the pricing power of these individuals. It's more a lack of childcare and transportation and ways for people to get to work that creates a situation when there's not that many people that can join the labor force. But there is a huge opportunity gap and a wealth gap. This has been created directly by monetary policy. And with this rise in the populist uprising, where the people really want to see some solution, Larry Fink, the self-made billionaire, the founder of BlackRock, has said, look, if CEOs can't figure out a way to make capitalism more inclusive and get their employees to earn more and the companies to still stay profitable, the government will do something about it. And so I want to hear your thoughts about what's coming next as it comes to Washington. What do you think they will do, if anything, to quote unquote correct the opportunity gap, the wealth gap, and basically do what governments do, which is take the easy way out?
First of all, Fink is wrong. This is not capitalism. You began by talking about quantitative easing, and what is it now? The number came out, $29 trillion in Federal Reserve money pumped into the economy to prop up the failing banks and the major corporations. This is fascism. Let's call a spade a spade. It's the merger of state and corporate powers. If you don't believe me, ask Mussolini. That's his definition. This isn't capitalism. Capitalism is dead. All they do is, the whole deal is to help the very wealthy, the very bigs. Look at the bullshit. And now you could say bullshit because everybody's saying it. We got this little boy over here as the governor of New York, little arrogant Andy Cuomo, a boy like his brother, Chris, born on third base and thought they hit a home run. Two little boys who would be nothing if daddy wasn't Mario Cuomo, the governor. He wanted to give Bezos, the richest man in the world, $3 billion of our money so he could open up a Slavelandia operation where people make on Amazon about $28,000 a year. Who made up this bullshit that we have to give tax breaks to the very big and all of these tax incentives to help them make more money? It's not capitalism. This is a lot of crap that people are calling these rigged systems capitalism. It's fascism, the merger of state and corporate powers. 4 words say it. Too big to fail. Got it? So, think, he's a think, all right, and so are the rest of them. The Bridgewater Dalio, all these billionaires bullshitting about something that has to be done. Here's the deal. When I was a young man, there were no Blackwaters or Bridgewaters or any other waters. There were no hedge funds and private equity groups. The whole damn system is rigged for the very rich, and all people are plantation workers on the multinational plantations of Slavelandia in a country near you.
So, Gerald, I completely agree with you that this is that central banking and private government enterprises, semi-corporations, all of these things, they're not true capitalism. My question to you is whether or not you think in the next few years this will even intensify further. And not only will the government intervene with tax incentives as they've done, and with everything that's already been done in the past 10 years with monetary policy, but now with fiscal policy, you'll see things like credit from the income tax to the poor, more subsidies, rejudification of distressed areas, all sorts of new programs that will increase the deficit while interest rates stay very low, so that the government will take over even more of this country, and obviously make it even less capitalistic. I'm asking you, what do you think of the future? Forecast the trends for us.
Well, you're going to see, take a look around the world. Look what's going on in Algeria, to Sudan, to the Yellow Vest movement in France, where you see people that are rebelling against the inequality that's so prevalent around the world. In the United States, however, the people have no fight. There's no fight in this country. You know, they're men. What men? Take a look at who's running the White House. You got Trump. I mean, Trump is all talk. They look at the Mitch McConnell, and that's a man. And what do you got? Little Lindsey Graham? Did he come out of the closet yet? I mean, you don't have. Look at the people running the show. Look at the whole scheme. There's not going to be anything. They'll throw the peasants little crumbs to shut them up, and they'll be quiet. I don't see anything big happening in America as far as a revolution against the inequality. Not at this point. Not unless we have someone leading the pack that really makes it happen, and you don't have it. You got bullshit Bernie Sanders. I'll give you free education. I'll give you free health care. You buy 2 conditions, you get 1 free. You know what a freak he is. These are the kind of guys we used to beat up when I grew up in the Bronx. He was from Brooklyn, because there were suck-ups, brown noses, and bullshitters. There's a clown that calls him, I voted against the Iraq War. Hey, shithead, you voted for all Bill Clinton's destruction of Iraq. You voted against the amendment that Congress should vote to go to war against Afghanistan. You voted for nearly every military budget, you shithead. Also, what you did over there, you're bringing F-35s into the Burlington airport. Bernie bullshit. What are these guys going to do? They'll throw the people little crumbs. What the deficit means in building more socialist programs is going to be minor. Look at the damn military budget. When you put it all together with intelligence and homeland security and all this other bullshit, it's over $1 trillion. They'll throw chump change out there to quiet down the peasants a little bit, but do nothing to solve the big problems. And the big problem is putting back into place the antitrust acts that used to exist that would never allow a Google or a Facebook or a Twitter. They would never allow an Amazon, would never allow Home Depots or or Lowe's or Staples, when they used to have things that most people don't know because they're too young to know. There was a thing called stationery stores. There were things called hardware stores that hardly exist anymore because they did away with all the antitrust acts, the Glass-Steagall Act that allowed the big banks to get bigger. No, it's just more of a takeover again. All we are workers on the plantation of Slavelandia. They'll make the peasants and plantation workers a little happier to try to shut them up. And in the United States, it'll succeed because there's no fight here. Look what's going on in France with the yellow vests. People keep going to the street week after week. What do you see over here? Nothing. Nothing. Hey, how about the Venezuelan war? Don't you love that? Don't you love all the Democrats and the major media supporting it? Concluding that shithead, bullshit Bernie Sanders. I voted against the Iraq war. Hey, how about Bernie Sanders speaking out against Assange, huh? Not a peep about it. Nah, nothing's going to happen in this country.
Gerald, I want to talk to you about the trade war, China and the United States, what just happened with Trump raising tariffs again. Is this a negotiation tactic to get this thing moving faster? Obviously, the pressure, the democratic pressure is on him. He has elections next year. China doesn't have elections. They can withstand this longer. And obviously, what he's doing is he's trying to make sure that their stock markets hurt much more than the U.S. equities market hurts. And maybe that will speed things along. Or maybe you have other takes on this. In general, in the 21st century, will China and the U.S. be the two dominant countries? Do you foresee anything else? And how do you see this relationship building up in the next 5 to 10 years as China's economy grows to become, between 2025 and 2027, the largest in terms of GDP, and about 10 years later, the largest in terms of the military budget?
Well, you nailed it. It won't be, the military budget isn't, the business of China's business. Look at the Belt and Road Initiative. It's big. You're talking about almost $4 trillion worth of investment around the globe. And it's not, and around the globe, from South America to Africa, from Eurasia to Europe. The thing is real. And on the trade war, it's not a trade war. It's a trade imbalance, and media keeps calling it a war. All of the tariffs that Trump put on China so far amount to 0.7% of their GDP. Nothing. I disagree. Trump, to me, is a narcissistic piece of garbage. What he's doing with Venezuela, what they're doing with Iran, what he's doing favoring Israel's apartheid state and conditions of the Palestinians, I'm totally against. I support Trump 100% on the trade issue. It's ridiculous. You could thank Bill Clinton for this, by the World Trade Organization, by bringing him in, and what he's done with NAFTA. So the trade imbalance has to work out. Who would do business under these conditions? Nobody. So China is going to backtrack on it, and they're going to make a deal. They're not going to lose all this money. Oh, and going back to Trump and the Democrats, Bernie Sanders, bullshit Bernie Sanders, is attacking Trump for not being tough enough with NAFTA and with China. So he's playing that card as well. That's going to be a major card played during the 2020 presidential reality show. The major issues are going to be the economy, healthcare, and Trump is going to beat all of them on, and tariffs and trade wars, the rebalance of the trade issue. Those are going to be the three major issues. The other Trump card that's going to be played, you're going to see a peace agreement with Afghanistan and a peace agreement with North Korea. So just putting it all together to make it broader. So going back to the issue of trade war, you're going to start seeing, as I already mentioned, you're seeing Bernie Sanders coming out, and he's going to be the top contender, we believe, against Trump, saying that Trump isn't tough enough on the trade issue, and this is coming from a so-called socialist Democrat.
So let's talk about the economy. 10 years into this quote-unquote recovery, this is the longest bull market in U.S. history, and save for the 19.2% drop in December, and you had an intraday bear market in December. This is the longest bull market in history. We don't see euphoria yet, though, Gerald. I mean the amount of cash on the sidelines is still pretty robust. In the first quarter of 2019, people have actually moved from stocks to bonds, uh, obviously betting on lower rates, and you're just not seeing what we've seen in past bull markets and the way they end. That you're seeing a lot of retail participation and the media jumping all over this, etc. What I did see is an article from Business Week that says, "Is inflation dead?" I assume you've seen that one. The last time they called something dead, it was equities. It was 1982 at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom of the bear market. So I want to ask you, two things. First of all, people are very confused on the topic of inflation. You have Trump saying essentially there's no inflation. You have the Fed saying we can't figure out this inflation thing. It's so low. On the flip side, you have many sites that use the previous way that the inflation was measured, and they're saying it's 7 to 8%. There's so many different variations here of inflation. Some say, hey, this bull market is basically inflation manifesting in the markets. It hasn't gone to Main Street, it has gone to asset prices. Where do you see this entire scenario? You've said the economy will be a major issue in the next elections. Bull markets are obviously great for presidents to reinforce that, hey, we got the economy under control, etc. Tell us a little bit about what do you think Trump will say in the election campaign, and where do you think the bull market is headed?
All right, where the bull market is headed is going to keep going as long as there's a lot of cheap money. I mean, that's the end of the story. That's what made it, and that's what's going to keep it going. When cheap money stops, you saw what happened, as you mentioned, with the equities going down into nearly bear territory in the United States, and of course in other countries they were in bear territory, particularly China. And going back to the other question I didn't fully answer, and you made the point, China's economy is going to be bigger than the United States in a couple of years. And China is going to be the world leader in the global economy. They're buying up the world. They're buying up ports everywhere. I just got back from the Philippines. All the major hotels I went to in certain places, a number of them were owned by the Chinese. They're buying up everywhere. So going back to your second question now, with where the economy is going, where the markets are going, as long as cheap money keeps going into it, the markets will go up. And you saw it. We called for an economic 9/11 on September 19th, 2018, when the Fed said they were going to aggressively raise interest rates. The next day, the S&P 500 hit an all-time high. Following that, the dive began because the cheap money flow was going to stop. And it only picked up on January 4th when Powell came out, the Fed chair said, we're going to be, quote, patient in raising interest rates. And then around the world, China, everybody's pumping more cheap dough in because the United States said they were going to be less aggressive in raising interest rates. When the monetary methadone stops, the drug addict's going to die. It's as simple as that. I called it wrong back in 2012. I thought the markets crashed. I didn't know about quantitative easing and negative and zero interest rate policy. They didn't teach me that in Economics 101 at graduate school. And tracking trends is an understanding of where we are, how we got here, and where we're going. And the where we were never there before. So they're making up new scams to keep the equity markets going. As for inflation, I wrote something back in 1999. I call it the 5 Gs. Globalization. The 5 O's, excuse me. Open markets, online, overcapacity, overproduction, and overpopulation. That's why you don't see inflation in that sense of what they're conducting inflation as now. There are too many. Look at the human waves of people escaping countries, looking for jobs. I tell you, I just got back from the Philippines. You know what they pay a waiter working all day? $3 a day. They have a thing on there, on the thing, when you pay the bill, a service charge included. So you don't think you're going to leave them a tip because they're going to get it automatically. The waiter tells me if the company gets 85% of it, they get 15% of it. The poverty levels around the world are gigantic. People are trying to leave these countries, go somewhere else to work. The real inflation, as you mentioned, is much higher. Healthcare costs, insurance costs, taxes. Look at the bullshit taxes they charge over here in Kingston that I have to pay for property taxes, school taxes, an antiquated system soaking the money out of people. Gasoline, other things that are causing people more money. You can't, yeah, people say eat organic. I go to the organic, I try to eat healthy all the time. First book I worked on was Natural Healing. You know what it costs to buy a damn orange? $1. $1 for an orange, an organic orange. Could you imagine that? So what I'm saying is, yes, there's the real inflation, but the fake inflation that the government gives us is going to be kept down because of the 5Gs that I mentioned. And I'm the only one talking about that in the world. That's why the Federal Reserve doesn't see it. That's why Warren Buffett doesn't see it, because they're not putting all the pieces together. Overproduction, overcapacity, open markets, online, they're all there to show you that overproduction, or online, overcapacity, I forget one of the other ones, overpopulation, that is going to keep prices down. Because going back to what I said earlier, all we are plantation workers for the global plantation of Slavelandia.
Gerald, I want to ask you about this open markets, because many have said that Trump is the first American president in a long, long time that is deglobalizing, that is trying to close tax arbitrages between America and other safe havens, bring money back to America, bring companies back to America. Is this going to cause a different salary mentality in the U.S.? Will this cause American businesses any change? Or do you see globalism as a far bigger and more forceful trend, probably instigated by deep state agencies, etc., and they will just not allow the United States to become a more deglobalized country? Or we're seeing so many central banks gobbling up gold, distrusting each other, acting in the same way they acted before world wars, where they create new agreements and they just don't trust other countries' currencies, etc. Is the world becoming a more problematic place, more distrusting between countries, and less globalized? Or is this not a big trend? Is this not something to really think about?
No, it's a huge trend. There's the anti-globalization movement, and I'm a believer in self-sustaining economies. 96% of the clothing that we're wearing in the United States comes from overseas. When I was a young guy, they used to make it around here. I remember living in, I'm born in the Bronx, I'm a New York guy. I remember when down in the garment district, New York, on the streets, they'd be pushing all the stuff around the streets, In New York City, that's all gone. It's gone everywhere. The mills are gone. Everything is closed down. Manufacturing, only 12% of our GDP is manufacturing based. We should be a self-sustaining economy. We have 320 million people, rich in natural and human resources. Why are we bringing all this stuff in? Because slimy little lowlife bastards and bitches sold us out with the World Trade Organization and NAFTA. They took our jobs away. The corporations went over there, used slave labor, gave them all our technology. China wouldn't be where it is. No, they're not stealing technology. The bastards and bitches, because you have to be equal now. You just can't say bastards anymore. You got to spread it around, because you got the Mays, the Thatchers, and the Clintons. Let's call it equal. That sold us out. The manufacturers, China didn't steal anything from them. In Europe and the United States, the manufacturers brought all of their intelligence there that we paid for, so they can make things cheaply, bring them back, and make more money. That's globalization. And then when that becomes too expensive there, they go somewhere else. So going back to, yes, globalization is going to be an issue, but the multinationals that are running the show, owning the airwaves and owning the politicians, are going to keep it going. Trump is only doing a very minor part in it. The tax breaks still exist. Look, Amazon didn't pay a penny in taxes last year. IBM didn't pay taxes. 60 of major companies in America didn't pay taxes. The offshore is still going on. So it's going to be, again, there's going to be a point of off with their heads 2.0. And that's going to happen when people lose everything. And when people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. But they're not there yet because they keep feeding them, throwing them the crumbs to keep them happy and fat. And I say fat and happy because when you look at the food stamp program in America, they could use those things to buy all the crappy junk food they want. And so what they do is they junk them down and drunk them down mentally so they don't fight back. They give them just enough to keep them off the streets.
Gerald, I know there's so much more where this came from, and you write very lengthy and very articulate trends during report. I love the published stuff. There's so much art in there and beautiful work. Can you tell people a little bit more about the newsletter and that part of the business?
Yeah, the magazine is a monthly, and there's no other magazine like it in the world. And if you're listening to the mainstream media now, you're getting dumbed down by the stupidity they keep feeding you. It's the only magazine in the world where you will read history before it happens. Our forecasts are etched in stone. You know, whether it was the big cannabis trend, we were among the first to call it, to whole health healing, clean foods. I coined that term back in 1993. New York Times did a big story on it. Where the future is going and how to prepare for it, to avoid the dangers and seize the opportunities. That's what the Trends Journal is about. We also do podcasts 5 days a week. The Trend Vision 2020 podcasts and Trends in the News podcasts. And we put out trend alerts each week. It's only $129 a year and money back guaranteed. If we don't live up to what we say, you get your money back. But rarely does anyone ever want a refund because we produce what we promise. So you can go to trendsjournal.com to find out more information.
Gerald, thank you very much for coming on the show, and we'll definitely circle back. Always love to have you on the show. I love the enthusiasm and the passion that you have towards these things, and it seems like you're a true patriot, and you love America as it is, and you're not trying to to offshore America to other parties. So thank you very much for being on.
Thank you, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Okay.